Good afternoon. My name is Vickie Ayres, and I am the Minutes Matter QuickBooks and Quoting Tech Support Specialist, also known as the Countess of QuickBooks. I'm also certified by Intuit QuickBooks as a Pro Advisor. I've met several of you already on the forum or while doing setup consultations. It's nice to see all of you here. It's always exciting for me to see how many people are interested in improving the business side of their business and come in to learn about quoting. If you would like to ask a question, you'll need to type it into the question and answer field in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will break at the end of sessions and at the end of groupings of what I'm just demonstrating and answer questions. And by typing in the question, we're able to repeat the questions so that everyone can hear, and it facilitates the recording of these sessions so that you can watch them later by clicking on the link on the website. Today's webinar will be in 2 sessions. The first session will run from about 1 to 1:30, and then we'll stop for some questions and start the second session. In the first session, I'll be demonstrating the QuickBooks and Quoting system using the designer style quote. Many design professionals get their yardage and labor information from their workroom. This information can be quickly and easily brought into the quote with no calculation required. We'll show examples of quoting for window treatments. I'll also show you the groups that you can use for furniture and consultations. So let's take a look at that now. If we go up here on my icon bar, I have an icon for the estimate, and you'll notice that when we set you up with QuickBooks and Quoting, I have an intuitive icon designed for you that shows the flow of a job in QuickBooks. Estimate, down payment receipt, deposit the money into your checking, create purchase orders. You'll start getting bills for all the merchandise you've ordered, and then of course you can pay bills with the Pay Bills icon. Create your final invoice when you're ready to deliver to the customer, and then accept the final payment from the customer. So those icons have all been put up there as prompts for you to watch the flow of a job in QuickBooks. So we'll click on our estimate icon. And I would like for you to think of the estimate as being in 5 distinct areas. And we're going to go from one area to the next and working vertically through these columns down here. And that's why we refer to this method or system as being vertical quoting. It's not quoting for vertical drapes or vertical blinds. It's working up and down through our columns versus working across from left to right the way that we read and the way people instinctively want to do it. But if we've learned that if you work up and down and stay with the same kind of task, working through your item column, working through your quantity column, working through your description column, you'll learn to quote very, very quickly with this kind of system. Now, area 1 is the header, and we're going to use our tab key and tab from field to field to field so that we don't forget to deal with any of the fields that are in our header. Area 2 will be the item column, and we'll work from the top to the bottom, editing the items that come in on our group, deciding what to keep, what to delete, what to change to a similar item, and is there anything we need to add to the items that we're going to sell to this customer. Area 3 is the description column. We'll go through all of the descriptions, editing them, the ones that we need to, from the top to the bottom, working vertically again. And then area 4 will be where we'll go to actually calculate all of our quantities, working from the top to the bottom again vertically. Area 5 is the last 5 columns in our quote here, and we'll deal with those at the end as area 5, working up and down through the cost column. Now, excuse me, we're going to start by choosing a customer. Now, I've got several customers set up in this company file, so all I have to do is start typing their name or choose the drop-down arrow and choose a customer. We'll do the Casey Green's master bedroom for this example. Now, I'm going to use my tab key in order to tab from field to field. We're happy with this one, so we'll leave that the same. And I have classes set up in this company file, but we're just going to ignore that for today. And then we go to our print preview field, and we'll take a look at that button later when we've got our quote finished. We'll take a print preview to see what it looks like. And then we're tabbing and we're in our template list. And there's basically two templates that you'll need, one for creating summary style quotes, which is the first one, the one it's defaulted to. And then, of course, if you're using a GP dash group, which I'll talk about those in a minute, versus a G dash group, then you would choose this other template. But we're going to use a G dash group to start with, so we'll keep this first template choice. Now I'm tabbing again, and I'm okay with the date. It defaulted to today. Tabbing again, I'm on my proposal number. Now the proposal number will automatically advance from the previous proposal number, so we're okay with that. Tabbing again, my address is fine. It was set up to this in the customer center for this particular customer. We don't need to change that. And then tabbing again, I think we'll change the terms. She was set for net 15, but I would like her to pay due on receipt in this particular case. So we just choose some different terms by clicking on the drop-down menu. Now tabbing again, I'm going to show you a very cool little hotkey. In any field where there is a date, you can use this trick. If you think of the word week, it starts with a W and it ends with a K. So if we want to take this date to the end of the week, we're just going to hit K one time, just the K key, and watch what happens. Takes us to the end of this week. And if I wanted to get very quickly and easily what my delivery date would be if I'm about 6 weeks out, or I'm hoping to be 6 weeks out with this job, I would hit my K key 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very cool. And you can remember it easily because week, the end of the week, the end of the word week, ends in a K, so you can use that. Of course, the W would take you to the beginning of the week. In the word month, you could go to the beginning of the month with an M, to the end of the month with an H. And if you wanted to use today, T takes you to today. But we'll go with a K to the end of the week, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very cool. Now this field right here is the most important field in the entire quote, the first field in the item column. Because what we have here is we always want to start with a group here. And a group item is just simply a special kind of item where we have already collected and gathered together and put into one place all of the individual items that you would need to sell or that you typically use to sell a particular kind of quote. So if you are creating a drapery quote, when you type G for group and dash, it tells you these are the groups. It just sorts it up to everything that starts with G dash, and then you're for sure going to be able to choose a group that you want for your quote. Now in this particular case, we're going to do what we call a subcontract window treatment and installation group. Now this is what I was talking about, the designer style quote. They don't need to calculate all of their yardage and labor items. They just are going to get one number for labor from their workroom, and their workroom will tell them what kind of yardage to get. So if they choose this particular group, like I'm going to now, these are the things that come up by default in that group to prompt them to charge their customer for these items. Now working vertically, up and down in this column, it's real easy to do if you use your up and down arrow key. So we're going to arrow down to the first item, and we're going to ask ourselves, do we want to keep it? Do we want to delete it? Do we want to change to a similar item? Or do we need to keep, delete, or change? Well, we want to keep this item because we're going to charge them for some workroom labor. Arrow down, we're going to keep this item because we do want to charge them for some main fabric. Arrowing down, we want to keep one contrast fabric because we're going to put some banding on this drapery item. Arrowing down again, it defaulted to bring up 2 contrast fabrics, but I only need 1. So I'm going to remove this one item, one slot, or one line at a time. So I'm going to hold down my control key and hit delete 1 time gently. And that removed the item from our quote. Now, I do want to have some trim on this. I think I'll run some trim along the edge of that banding that we're going to put on. But I want to be more specific. Instead of just trim other, So if we want a similar item, we just click on our drop-down arrow. Because we already had a trim item here, it took us to the right spot in our item list that we could just choose a different trim. We could choose bullion trim, brush fringe. I think I'll choose the tassel fringe. So it just changed the original item that came by default into something similar. Now, arrowing down, we have an iron pole. Well, I think we'll put this on a traversing rod, a Kirsch Superfine traversing rod. So because there's already a hardware item in our group on this line, when we hit our drop-down arrow to change to a similar item, we're already in the hardware area of the item list. So now we're going to arrow up until we see that traversing rod, a Kirsch Superfine. There they are. And our treatment is going to be 100 inches wide. So I'm going to choose the 66 to 120 rod. And that just swapped out the iron rod to the traversing rod that I wanted to show. Now, arrowing down, we don't need the finials anymore. So we're going to Control-Delete that one line out. Oops. And now we don't need the iron rings, Control-Delete. And we don't need the iron brackets, Control-Delete. Now, arrowing, we're on the satin ivory lining item right now. I think we'll switch that to a white lining. Again, to change to a similar item, you choose the drop-down arrow, and we can just really easily choose the cotton sateen white. And that just swapped it out. Arrowing down, I believe I'll choose a white inner lining also. And we hit our drop-down arrow, and we can choose the inner lining bleached white. So we're just switching a similar item for another similar item. Now, arrowing down, we do want to charge them a rendering fee. We do want to charge them a measuring fee, an installation fee, and we'll charge that by the linear foot. We could choose some other type of method. You could choose a flat rate or a per bracket, anything like that, but we'll stay with the linear foot. And arrowing down, now we're at the shipping item, and this is just where we'll estimate what our shipping cost would be to the customer to bring in all the materials we've decided to order. Now, when you get to the bottom, you've decided what to keep, what to delete, what to change to a similar item. Now we need to look at that and think, okay, now is there anything else I need to charge them for? Do I need to add any items to this list on the estimate? So I think that we'll add an installation item for our ladder. We're going to pretend that this is a tall treatment and installation, and our installer is going to charge us extra for a ladder charge. So we're going, the opposite of Control-Delete is Control-Insert to add a slot, add a line one at a time. So holding down my Control key, I hit Insert, and that just gives me an empty slot. Now, by looking above, I can see that all of my installation items are going to be in the 600 area of the list. Or if you think of it as being a store, they'll be in the 600 aisle. So if I just type 600 into this empty slot, QuickBooks takes me to that specific area very easily, very quickly, without having to scroll a lot. And now I can look at my list, and there's my ladder charge. I just click on that, and it adds that fee to that quote, that as proposal. So that's the item column. I've decided all the different items I'm going to sell to my customer now. Working up and down, our mind stays in the same kind of thought process. We're just picking things to sell. We haven't gotten any, price books out. We're not thinking about the cost. We're not thinking about the descriptions. We're just thinking about what am I going to sell to this customer, and you stay within that task. Moving to Area 3, this description column. We're going to edit any descriptions that need to be edited. Now, the more descriptive you are here, you can turn this into an actual work order for your workroom. So we're going to be very specific. This is a 100 finished width by 97 finished length, pinch pleat drapery. Good if I could spell drapery right. And then I just hit return so that I could say 1.5-inch banding set in 0.5 inches on lead edge, tassel fringe along banding on lead edge. We're just describing everything. And they are going to be lined and interlined. And that's really all we need to change about our description from the quote. Now, arrowing down, I will get to the main fabric item. And QuickBooks has decided to be very tricky. Okay, we're back in our main fabric item, and we're going to indicate that this is going to be pattern number Eastland, and it's going to be red, and we are going to get that from Casimir. So we're just putting in the description something a little more descriptive than what came up by default. Now going to the contrast fabric, we'll do the same thing for that. This is going to be style number 1002, and it's going to be gold, and we're going to get that from Fabricut. So just editing the descriptions. Now the yards of tassel fringe, we would want to do the same thing with that one, but just to save a little time, I'm not going to put that in right now. And we would want to edit any other descriptions working down through our quote until we get to the final description, which is this one here at the bottom. Now this description in a G- group is all the customer is going to see because it's a summary style quote. G- means a group that does not print item details. There are other groups that you can choose that have exactly the same items preloaded into them, but they're GP- groups, and the P stands for printing item detail. So this particular one, you need to be very descriptive about what the customer is getting. You would maybe want to describe the room and the windows and that what the fabric is like, and just get as descriptive, romance the treatment, describe all of the details of the banding and the trim so that they know what they're buying. Because this description needs to justify the large number that's going to show up over here on the right-hand side. So in the interest of time, that's all I'm going to put in for a description, but you, of course, would want to really flesh that out and get a beautiful description typed there. Now we're going to go to Area 4, and we're going to calculate our quantities. Now, of course, we would have a quantity of 1 for our workroom labor, so that because they're just going to give us one number of how much it's going to cost. So that one's already done. Arrowing down, our workroom told us to get 27 yards of fabric, and they told us to get 4 yards of contrast fabric, and they asked us to get 7 yards of tassel fringe, and we need 1 Kirsch superfine rod, and we need 27 yards of sateen lining, and we need 27 yards of interlining, 1 render fee, 1 measure fee, and then in the linear feet, we know that we'll need 9 linear feet, because our rod is 100 inches wide, divided by 12 is going to be 8 something, so we'll just put in a 9 for how many linear feet of installation labor we need. We're going to have 1 ladder fee, and then, of course, 1 shipping charge on behalf of the client. So we've worked from the top to the bottom, just calculating all of our quantities. And that's what will help to make you really fast when you're quoting, is if you have a system for how you're going to work through the quote, and you don't have to think as hard then about what my next step is going to be. Now, this particular cost number, let's say that they said that would be $567 labor. They've already calculated in how much to apply the banding and the tassel fringe and to make the drapery, so that's your one number that you get. And then we need to edit our pricing for the fabric. We looked it up, and it was $32 this time. And our contrast fabric, we got a really good buy on that at $12. And our tassel fringe, we spent a little bit more there. It's $45 cost. And then we have our Kirsch Superfine Rod. We checked the pricing on those. They're still $35. And then the rest of the pricing was already set up. Our cotton lining is $2.50. The inner lining is $3.25. So there's not much to change here until we get to the shipping charges on behalf of the client. And here's where we need to guess at approximately what we think it'll take to bring in our main fabrics, our fringe, and our rod, and we'll just estimate that that's going to be $55. So you can see that you can very quickly then go down through the cost column because you don't have to think about any of those other things that we already dealt with in Area 1 through 4. Now, the next thing to do is to think about your markups. Is the number here within our customer's budget? Is this where we think that we can be, or do we need to adjust any of our markups? You can change your markups by just changing the 100 to 80% or 50% or 150%, whatever you think you need to get the number to come out right here. So now we're going to click on the Print Preview button so we can see what this quote looks like. And it'll open up our Print Preview using the template that we chose earlier. And it's thinking very hard. It's thinking very hard. Yesterday I was doing a webinar, and QuickBooks thought so hard that it basically just kind of shut itself down, and we had to start over. I'm hoping that that won't be the case today. But there does seem to be something going on with my printer or my computer. I don't really think that it's the QuickBooks program as much as it is my computer and something that's going on with that. I'm going to go down here and look at something. All right. Well, our Print Preview is not coming up, but it's still flashing a little bit, so it may still be thinking about it. Before we go on to the second session, what I might do is let Debbie answer some questions while I reboot my computer. Here comes our Print Preview. We're going to be able to look at that before we try doing that today. But we can do some question and answer time while we're waiting for all of that, for my computer to reboot and for me to come back into the meeting. Debbie, are you there? She'll come on here in a minute. She's probably typing answers to other people's questions.
Vicki?
Yes, Debbie?
Yes, I'm here.
We seem to be having the same issue that we had yesterday, where QuickBooks is just, there's something with my computer that's making it just refresh very, very slowly. So I wondered if you could answer questions for people while I duck out of the meeting and then come back in and finish the second session where we show the labor and yardage calculation style. Can you do that for me?
I'll do it.
The screen that's up right now is the Print Preview, even though it took a little while for it to load. And you can see that it's been customized really beautifully with a letterhead style header and a color scheme. And this is actually Debbie's proposal that she uses for her design company. And it's very, very beautiful. And notice that the G- group only shows us the description and the total for the customer, so that you can show a finished product or summary style quote to your customer. You're not selling them fabric and lining and trim. you're selling them a window treatment that's already installed. So I'm going to hit close on this, and Debbie can answer a few questions. Let me make her the presenter before I do that.
No, I don't. No, you don't need to make me presenter because they can just hear me talk.
Okay.
Because you'll just come back on in just a minute. And
I'll be back in just a moment.
All right. All right. Well, I know she didn't talk about different versions, and I see one of the questions is regarding the version of QuickBooks, and we recommend 2010 is out now. Most of you know that, and we recommend the Premier version as opposed to the Pro. It's about a couple $100 more, but we do only recommend that you guys upgrade every 2 to 3 years, at minimum every 3 years. I talked to somebody not long ago, and they hadn't upgraded in almost 5 years, and so pretty soon it will make it QuickBooks sunsets those versions, and in fact I think before 2000, maybe 2007 and below are sunsetted, and that means QuickBooks actually doesn't even support those. They don't do any more updates, and of course they won't work with the newer operating systems like Windows 7. So the biggest thing, the difference between Premier and Pro, is really two things that people would want to use or purchase and pay $200 extra for, is the fact that you can be in a proposal and create a PO from that proposal. That means all that item, you can select particular items to make a PO, and they will go right over to a PO and make it, and you just actually put your price in. It puts all the codes, well, it puts the price in too. It matches everything for you, so you don't have to worry about matching your codes, matching the description. Everything moves from the estimate to the purchase order. And what that does for you, or how that helps, is when you are doing a job profitability report, it allows you to see the cost and the income side, so the expense and the profit. And then it shows you the difference between the two, because if you don't have matching codes, then you can't see what you actually made on the job and what your profit was. And that's very helpful. The next reason, or the second item that I really like, and it's a little thing, but and it's come in so handy for me, is the fact that when you're doing a proposal, say that you've gotten this proposal done, the client's looked at it and they're happy with it, but they're going to wait for just a little bit and they'll get back with you. Well, say 3 months or 4 months or 6 months goes by. Then they call you back and they decide they want to change something. Then it automatically, as soon as you change an estimate, a window pops up in Premier only. Do you want to create a change order? And as soon as you click yes, when you create a change order, then this little text comes up on the proposal, and I delete all of the other information except I like the little squiggly and the timestamp, and I actually type in a custom note saying something like added fringe to the lead edge of the drapery, or change fabric from Nor color black or whatever, and then you changed it and made a note of whatever you did. And sometimes I've had as many as 3 or 4 change order stamps on an estimate. Makes it really handy. So when you go back to reference something or an estimate, if a client calls back even later after they've made a second change, then you can always see that on your estimate, and you know exactly when you change that. And the client, even if the client has lost one of the estimates, you can always see, why did the estimate go up $1,000? Oh, I see. Remember, October 12th, we changed the trim, or we changed your fabric, or we added another window, or whatever you did would be on that change order. And that's something to always make sure, whether you do it manually, which you can do that. Anybody that has Pro can actually manually go down to the bottom underneath all the items or the group codes and actually type that in yourself. Put the date and time and just make your own change order. So that would be a solution. It's just nice for QuickBooks to remind you. It's a prompt so you don't actually forget to do that. Then let's see what other questions we have here. And Sherry's asking if there's she purchased QuickBooks and Quoting when it first came out, and is there an update? And yes, there is. Sherry, you can do an assisted, anyone that's purchased before Vickie started, or even if before Vickie came with us a couple years ago, we didn't do the setup that was included. And so Vickie and I have made quite a few changes in the codes, with adding G's and GP's to the codes and adding different codes too. We've also, Anna, me, and Vickie have all added several additional codes. So if any of you that already have QuickBooks and Quoting, you can purchase an assisted setup for $75 and you will get the new codes. So I hope that answers your question, and you can email, and anything that you have a question about, you can email Vickie, V-I-C-K-I-E, at minutesmatter.com. So it's just Vickie at minutesmatter.com, or QuickBook, or I think it's QB support at minutesmatter.com. So she has two different email addresses.
Guess what?
Well, you're back.
I'm almost back.
Oh, okay. Have you called? Are you calling in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, but I don't see your green.
I could hear you the whole time I was in, so I'm assuming our customers can hear me also, or our attendees.
Not sure, because you're not green. Your phone, let me unmute you.
I am green.
You are on your
green
side?
Girl. Why don't you see if any one of our customers can respond in the question and answer area?
Oh, okay. Somebody is saying that they can hear you.
They can hear me. Great.
Okay, they are saying that.
I never lost the audio in my ability to hear you, so I really thought I was still on air.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay.
So we can see the screen where QuickBooks is open again. I'm
but
sorry
now you might need to, let's see, are you the presenter, Vickie? Can we?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good deal. Okay, all right. So I think you're ready to go.
Thanks very much for standing in there for a minute.
All right. Okay.
I really appreciate it. Now, what we're going to do is look at the estimate, first of all, for the GP-codes, because I spoke about those just a minute ago and wanted to make sure that you understood the difference between it. So here's a GP-code, and it is a labor and calculation style. But when we hit print preview on this particular one, I've also chosen the GP template to go with that, so that when we hit print preview, we end up seeing the, let's see, that template is not set up right. We should have items on there. Well, we'll just go to the print preview. This particular one has the items showing up here, and we wouldn't want that column to be there. We would want the description, the rate, and the quantity. So let's go in and change that with a customization. And we'll go to our column area. We don't want the item column to print, so I've removed that. But we do want the quantity column to print, so I've added that. See, that's where we get that now. Now if we go to OK and hit print preview, you can see that we get a quantity column, printed item detail, a rate, and a total. Now that doesn't, you choose a different template for that, but what really controls whether this will print or not is if you've chosen the groups, GP-groups, that will print. They've just been set up so that they will print the item detail, versus choosing a G-group, and when we hit the print preview, they get a just the description and just the total. It doesn't print all of that item detail. So when you start out your quote, if you choose a G-group, it won't print item detail. If you choose a GP-group, which you can see there down here later in the list, then it will print the item detail. So that's how you get it to print or to not print, is which group that you choose in that most important field of the quote when you get started. Now let's go to Save and New so that we can take a look at the quoting style that calculates labor and yardage. We've got an empty quote here. We're going to work through our top header by using the Tab key. Now I'm going to choose my customer, and we'll do the living room this time. I'm going to tab. I'm okay with it being an active estimate. I am going to skip the classing for this particular one. I'm at the Print Preview button. You can see as I'm tabbing. And then I'm in the template area. And this is the template that I want to use for a G- group. So now I'll tab to the date, tab to the proposal number, tab to the name and address, not requiring me to change any of these things. We'll change the terms again to due on receipt. We'll indicate 6 weeks out by clicking our K key once to take us to the end of this week, 6 times to take us 6 weeks out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're in the item column, the most important column or area of the most important field of the entire quote. So when we start typing G-, QuickBooks sorts up the list for us into just the G- or group items that don't print item detail. Now before we chose the subcontract window treatment in installation group, this time we're going to choose a G- drapery group. So it's not a subcontracted item. We want to actually calculate. It could be subcontracted, but we're wanting to calculate the actual labor charge, the actual yardage, and all that. So we'll choose the G- drapery. And you can see that it brought up lots of items for us automatically by default. And we're going to arrow down through the item column, deciding what to keep, what to delete, what to change to a similar item. Now, arrowing down, we're going to keep the pinch pleat item. We're going to keep the trim labor item. That's the labor to apply the trim. The labor item for the banding, we'll keep that one. And I don't think we'll do any hand sewing on this one. So this is one we would want to delete. Holding down the Control key and hitting delete 1 time gently, that item is removed. We do want to charge for inner lining labor in this case, and we do want to have a main fabric. We want a contrast fabric, and we want a trim. But again, we'll just choose a similar kind of trim by clicking on the down arrow, the menu, choosing the tassel fringe. Arrowing down, you can see that we are at the iron pole or the hardware now, and we want to change that to a similar item, a hardware item. We'll click on the drop-down arrow, scroll up gently until we can see that Kirsch Superfine, 100 inches wide, so we'll choose this one. Arrowing down, we don't need the iron rings anymore, so I'll Control-Delete. We don't need the brackets, Control-Delete. We don't need the finials, Control-Delete. Now the cotton sateen ivory. We want a lining item, but we want a similar one. We just want a white one. So hit the drop-down arrow, choose the white cotton sateen, and it's just as easy as that. Arrowing down the inner lining for natural, we want a white inner lining, so we'll just choose that one. And then arrowing down, we do want to charge a render fee, a measure fee, and an installation fee. Now, when I work with customers, a lot of times they say, oh, no, I don't charge for rendering. I don't charge for measuring. And but they typically will charge for installation, so I'm not sure why they don't want to charge for these other services. When we're selling somebody a completed product, you have an opportunity inside of this group to recover the cost of things that we offer to people for free. Now, the installation, we don't tell them, exactly how much money they're going to pay on installation. I kind of refer to this as being like the free lunch on your last flight. Now, they gave you a free lunch, or maybe they did. A lot of airlines have gone away from that. But you can be pretty sure that it wasn't really free. They actually accounted for that cost when they calculated the price of your ticket. So this way, we can actually charge for a rendering fee, charge for a measuring fee, charge for installation, because we're selling them a finished product, and those prices and cost factors stay within our group inside and not printed. Now, we've got the shipping item. Let's add another item to this particular group. Let's say that we wanted to add some buttons to it. So if we go on up into this area, and we want the open slot to come right above where we're at in the quote, The opposite of Control-Delete is Control and Insert. So holding down my Control key, hitting Insert one time gently, I end up with an empty slot. Now we can see that the surcharges are going to be in the 950 area. So if we just type, because it's above in the other item, we can just type in 950. That takes us right to the area where the surcharges are, and then we can choose the button surcharge for buttons on our drapery here. And so we'll just choose that one, and now we have added another item to our list of things that we want to sell to our customer. That was Area 2. Now scrolling back up, we'll go to Area 3. And again, we want to put as much detail as we need into the descriptions in order to be able to create work orders at the end. That would be really handy. So we'll just say that it's 100 finished width by 97 finished length. And most of the other items that tell us about what need to happen are in other items, so we don't have to do as much in this actual description. Now, our treatment is 97 inches finished length. So there's really only one line of information here that pertains to the yardage information for our quote. So here we're going to highlight the information we don't need, and then we're going to hit delete, not Control-Delete. This is a highlighting of text and just removing it from the description. If you hit Control-Delete, this entire item would disappear, and then you would have to add it back in, and that, you can do that, but it's just easier to just highlight the text we don't want and hit delete. So the text is gone now. Now we still have a couple lines of text down here that we don't need, and we'll just highlight that and delete. So now we're left with the actual yardage prompts that we'll use a little later in our quote right here. And let's talk about what these different prompts mean. This first number in parentheses indicates how much yardage you would need per width if your fabric was a solid or a virtually 0-inch repeat. And the second number always means, in the parentheses, if you had a 27-inch repeat or less fabric. So with those two numbers, you can calculate, 99% of the jobs that you'll ever do, it's either a 0-inch repeat or a 27-inch repeat or less. Now with those, if you know what your fabric is already, it's very easy. We'll assume that ours is going to be a 27-inch repeat. So now we don't need any of this text either. So I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to type in 27-inch R. So that kind of reminds me later that it's a 27-inch repeat, and that would mean that I knew that I saved the second number. This number for trim indicates how much trim you would need per width or leading edge in this case, because it assumes you want it on the leading edge. And so we can use that number later on when we're calculating our trim yardage. This number for 2-inch banding, this is what this means. It means you could make 2-inch banding, they're assuming again that you want it on the leading edge, for up to 10 panels or 10 leading edges with 3.75 yards. So that's the information that you'll need later on to calculate the yardage you'll need for your banding. It also gives you little notes that you might need in different kinds of treatments. This in particular tells us that we've already included 18 inches for the heading, the hem, and the break. Now, arrowing down again to describe any of the rest of our descriptions, we'll say that the trim is going to be tassel fringe applied along banding on lead edge. So we're just editing any descriptions that need to be edited. And then on the banding item, we'll indicate that that's going to be a 1.5-inch banding set in 0.5 inches. So again, just describing what we need to describe. It's going to be interlined, and you want buttons on pleat at tack line. So we're just describing everything we need to describe. And again, for the main fabric, you would want to indicate what was the style number and the color and then who is the vendor that you're going to get that from. You'd want to do that again on the contrast fabric. We'll do style number 1001 in gold, and we're going to get that from Fabricut. And then, of course, you would want to do the same thing again for the contrast fabric. Let's go ahead and do that on this particular one. And we will indicate that that's going to be style number 567, and it's going to be color multi, and we'll get that from Vickie. And there you go. Now we're going to edit any of the other descriptions that we need to. The traverse rod, the lining, none of those need to be really edited for descriptions until you get to the final description. Now again, this was a G- group that we used, remember, up here in this field. So none of our items are going to print detail for all of the items. They'll only see this particular description down here. And again, you would want to edit that, describe all of the embellishments and the details they're going to get. It would not be on custom wrought iron hardware. You would want to say that it'll be on a Kirsch superfine rod, and that whatever you're including in your price, you want to edit that description. So the customer is going to see that. It has to justify the big number that's going to come up over here. Now, we're going to area 4 now, which is the quantity column. Before I go there, I'd like to see if there are any questions I need to answer. Debbie, are we good for questions right now? She might be busy typing, so I'll just kind of look through here real quick and see. Will QB create a list that you would do your ordering from? Actually, what you would want to do is create purchase orders, like Debbie said, and either call or fax those in. It has a place where you can put the reference number on it, and then QuickBooks will keep track of what you have out on purchase orders that you're waiting for materials to come in, and you can actually run a report that's called open purchase orders. So that's kind of how you would get that list, is to create the purchase order and then create a report that showed open purchase orders. That seems to be the end of the questions. Don't forget, if you have questions, to type them into the question area, and then either Debbie or I will step in and answer those for you. Now here we're in the proposal, and we're back in area 4, which is the quantity column. Now, if you've been in the design business or a fabricator for very long, you know how to calculate how many widths of drapery go across a certain size of window, and that's all we're going to do in this field. But we're going to use a really cool little calculator that QuickBooks has built right into it. Now, we're going to put in the first number is how wide is our treatment. Our finished treatment is going to be 100 inches, so we'll type in 100. Now, in order to open up the calculator, you have to use the slash for divide, and that's the slash that's underneath the question mark. The Shift-8 key will give you a little asterisk, a little star. That means times. Now, the minus and the plus key are typically in the upper right-hand corner of your keyboard, and it just looks like a plus or a minus. So we're going to take 100, and we're going to multiply it by the fullness factor that we want to create. Now let's use about 2.5-inch fullness, and you can use any fullness factor that you want, but we'll just use 2.5 today. So times 2.5, well, that's going to tell us how full we want it. And then, of course, we would want to divide it by our fabric width in order to come up with how many widths of drapery. So we're going to hit the divide key and divide by 54 in this case. So 100 inches wide times 2.5 inches full divided by our fabric width gives us 54. Very, very simple calculating, and QuickBooks will do it right in the field. Now hit Enter. QuickBooks says that we need 4.62963. And, of course, we can't buy 4.6293 widths of fabric, so we're going to round that up to 5. So while it's still highlighted, you just type in 5. And now you've got 5 widths. Arrowing down, we want to put, indicate the charge for the trim application along the lead edge. Well, we have 2 leading edges, so we'll start with that. And we want to multiply that with the star times 97 inches long, because that's the length of our leading edge. So 97, hit Enter, and QuickBooks calculated 194 running inches of tassel fringe needs to be applied. Well, the banding item just uses the same number because it's calculating by the inch again. So we just type in 194. Now let's go down and calculate our yards of main fabric first, and then we'll go up and catch those other ones, because we want to know how many yards of main fabric there's going to be before we calculate our inner lining labor charge. So if our treatment is going to be 5 widths wide, and this number right here in the parentheses we knew was going to be 3.75 yards of fabric per width, we can come into the yards of main fabric and type in 5 times 3.75 and enter. 18.75 yards of fabric is what it will take, and I think we'll round up to 19 because it's nice to be able to cut the fabric where you want to when it comes in, especially with the repeat. So we just put in 19. Now if we go back up to the adding the inner lining labor, we're charging per yard of fabric, so we're just going to type in 19 again. And I think we'll probably have 7 pleats on each panel, so we need to charge for 14 buttons because we got 2 panels. 14 pleats. There's the charge for our buttons. Now the contrast fabric, that's for the banding, so that's where this prompt right here for 3.75 is going to come into play. So for the contrast fabric, that's way enough fabric to do banding on 2 lead edges, but you can't buy any less than that because you don't want any seams in it. So let's just get the 3.75 yards of fabric. And it tells us up in the yardage prompts right here that we need 3.25 yards of trim per leading edge. So we have 2 leading edges times 3.25. We could have done that in our head, but it's kind of fun to use a calculator. And hit enter, and now we've got 6.5. I think I'll round that up to 7 in case there's tape or something on the end I don't want to deal with. So now we've got 7. Now the rest of them are real easy. We need 1 rod. We need 19 yards of lining. We need 19 yards of the actual fabric, the inner lining fabric. We're going to charge for 1 render fee, 1 measure fee, and then let's use the calculator to calculate the linear feet. It's 100 inches wide, and if we divide it by 12, you get 8.333. We'll charge for 9 linear feet for installation. And that's how fast it is to get the quantity column filled out. Working from the top to the bottom, we've kept our mind working on the same kind of task and not jumping around, which will help to make you very, very efficient and very, very fast with your quoting if you get used to working this way. Now we're left with Area 5, which is the last 5 columns over here on the right-hand side. The first thing you want to do is just go through and adjust any of your cost factors. Now we already had our factor set up for how much labor per width on the drapery, so we'll leave that one like it is. Arrowing down, we had already set up that we charge 25 cents an inch cost on applying trim and 30 cents on banding. The $3.25 for inner lining labor is our regular fee. 50 cents a button. And then the main fabric, we have to check the pricing on that with the vendor. We did, and we found out it was $27. The contrast fabric, we got a really good buy at $12. And the tassel fringe, we're going to pay $15 cost on that. And we checked the price on the rod. They're still $35. And we had our lining and inner lining costs already set up, so that's good. And the same with the render, the measure, and the installation fees. Now we need to estimate again the shipping charge to bring in our rod and our materials and fabric and trim. So we'll estimate that that's going to be $55 again. And you can see how very quickly then, by adjusting all of your cost columns, we're almost completely done with our quote. Now let's talk about what these different fields mean. When I click into the amount field, see how it won't allow me, it's all grayed out, it won't allow me to change that number. That's because the amount is always going to be the quantity times the cost equals the amount. And then QuickBooks says, oh, you set this up to default at 100% markup, but do you want to change that at all? So maybe you think, well, I'm going to make that an 80% markup this time. And then when you click away, it changes your price. If you prefer to put in the total price over here, say we wanted to charge $500 for that, when you click back away someplace else, QuickBooks will calculate what markup is used based on the amount and the selling price. They'll tell you what the markup is. So if you're looking for a particular markup in order to raise the profitability of your company through a year, this markup column is where you're going to keep an eye that you're creating the markups that you need to get to the certain profit position you want to be at. So let's say that for the rod, you think you can only get 50% markup on those. So you can adjust your markups in order to get your number where it needs to be. This one we went up a little bit, this one we went down, and now we end up with our new number over here for our quote. And that's all there is to creating a labor and yardage calculation style quote. Stay with the method, vertical quoting, doing area 1, the header first. Area 2, work up and down through the items that you're going to sell. Area 3, you're editing all of your descriptions. Area 4, you'll be editing your quantities and changing those, calculating those, and then adjust all of your cost columns, and then look at your markups and see if that's where you want to be at the end. And that's all there is to creating the labor and yardage calculation style quotes. Now for designers, we have lots of different groups. Let's take a look at our item list. In the item list, you'll find the groups all the way at the bottom. And see here how we've got G- groups up here at the top. And we have the GP ones. These, when you choose these, then all of the item detail will print for your customer. If you choose the G- ones, then you're going to have the summary style quote when you're done. But we've got wallpaper and installation style groups, so that if you're a designer and you're selling wallpaper, we've got groups for staging and redesign. We've got space planning groups that you can use as a designer. Reimbursable expenses and consultations. If you're selling fabric or materials only, furniture and delivery, hard treatments and installation. Each one of these groups, when you use them, will prompt you to charge for things and make sure that all those individual items stay inside the group so that you can sell a summary style quote or summary style product, an estimate and proposal. So that's how the different groups work, G- versus GP-. And that is one of the major changes that we made in QuickBooks and quoting in the last year, was just to kind of rename those so that they were easier to pull up when you were in that first field in your estimate column right here, remember. So if you type G-, it's really easy to pick the right group. If you type GP-, if you want them to print the itemization, then you just type in GP- and they'll come up. So do we have any questions again now at the end here?
Vicki?
Yes?
Yes, we have. Can you show our existing QuickBooks and quoting customers how they could, that do not have the G or the GP codes, and
Okay.
if they have 2009 and above, how they could duplicate it to make GP codes?
G-. Okay.
Yes, if you will show both of those things, and then I have one or two other questions right after you finish that.
I'm going to go into the setup for this one and take the G- out. So I'll delete that and delete that. Oops, got rid of the D. And we'll say OK. So if you're in an older version of QuickBooks and quoting, your groups are just going to be named drapery or hardware or pillows, and they don't start with G-. And you would like yours to say G-. All you have to do is just double-click or right-click and choose Edit. That item, come to the beginning, type in G-, and now you have G- groups. Now, it's just that easy. So when you put the G- in the front and say OK, now you'll have a G- group. And you just need to change all of those groups to start with G-. Now, you would not have anything like this down here. So if you wanted to create GP- groups in order to have ones to choose that would print the item detail, if you are in 2009 or 2010, that's really easy to do. So let's go in and name this one Draperies, just so that I can get a different name in here, but it's not the same as something else. So we got G-Draperies, and we want to create a GP-Draperies. You just right-click and duplicate this item. Now, when you duplicate it, QuickBooks just adds this DUP to the beginning of the name, and what we want to do is remove the DUP part and type GP, and we've got our dash. Now, all you did was you took the G-dash group and you duplicated it so it has the exact same things down here in the basket, the exact same description, but you just put a P on it, GP-Draperies. Now, in order to make this group one that will print, because you duplicated one that didn't print, in order to make this one that prints, you just click on Print the Items in the Group, just that little check mark right there. Now, when you say OK, we're back in our item list. Now you have a GP-Draperies up at the top, and you can just grab that little triangle and bring it to the bottom so that it's sorted up into the GP area. Now we have a G-Draperies. We have a GP-Draperies, and the reason I did the IES because I already had a GP-Drapery. So I just changed the name a little bit so it would allow me to duplicate it. Now we've got one that doesn't print item detail, and now we have one that does print item detail just by using the little duplicate feature. Now, the duplicate feature only works in 2009 or newer, 2009 or 2010. So if you have an older version, 08 or older, you'll have to right-click, choose New, and set the item up. So that, I'm sorry, you want to choose a group item. And then you would have to set the item up by giving it a name, typing in a description, print the items in the group, and then you would have to add all of your items to the basket down below here by hand. So that's how you do it if you're in an older version. I'll hit cancel here. Okay. Debbie, were there any other questions?
Vicki?
Yes?
I keep pushing buttons. Anyway,
yeah.
Yes, a couple more. Just in case someone else had this question, Anne asked why we sold trim by the inch, and it's not that we sell trim by the inch on the item list. That's the labor, the cost of adding trim to a particular piece. When you actually sell the trim, then that would be calculated by your yards. You would actually put in yards.
Yeah,
so
the actual product trim is calculated by the yard, but the labor charge for trim application, we charge by the inch. And
exactly.
You can change that if you want. If you are charging by the foot, you can change the language to say foot and then change the charge so that it reflects what you would charge by the foot. All of that is customizable for you. And we teach how to do those kinds of things in a lot more detail in both the coaching program we've just started and in the courses that I teach online called Synergy, Get Ready, Get Set, Get Customized. We teach you how to do that in a lot more detail. I do see there's a question here from Joe Allen saying, in the older quoting, can we still copy, screen, and print in Word? Yes, you can, but there's a much better way to do that now. Let me show that very quickly. How here's a quote that you're going to give to your customer. Let's do the print preview. And they are going to get the description and the total. But you'd kind of like to have a copy with a lot of detail for your file folder, or maybe to give to someone who still wants to see all the different items that make up that quote. Let's choose letters. And it wants to say this first. And in QuickBooks and Quoting, the newer versions, I've already got an edited template for this, so we're just going to choose this one to show it. Say Next. And we're not going to use the name and the title on it, so we can just ignore that and say Next. Now, QuickBooks is going to go out and open up my Word program. It's going to take everything that was on that quote in the detail part and put it into a table and create this Word document that you can have for the item detail. The only thing it does that's a little weird is right here underneath that first item, it kind of slides these things over into, the wrong columns. So I just highlight them with blue and hit Control X to cut them out. And then I come back in here into this field right there and Control V to paste them back in, and that just kind of lines them up. And it doesn't do it with hardly anything except for this first item. It'll just kind of slide those over into the wrong column. But that's a really nice little trick to be able to get the item detail. Then you can save this just like you would any other Word document in your computer, and you don't have to go through the whole copy, print your screen, save it to a document, and all that. I love this little feature with the letter. Because I have a design business. I have a workroom. I work primarily to the retail. And I do summary style quotes for everyone. But I still have one designer that I work for who wants to see the item detail. So I do a G- drapery quote for everybody. I do the summary style every time because I like to do things the same way, the same process every time. And then I create a letter and I put one in the file, and if the customer needs it, then I'll print another copy of it for a customer or a designer. So that's how I get around the whole print detail, not print detail, with that little workaround. Debbie, are there any other questions?
Vicki, did you cover that they either have to commit one way or the other, and that's why we came up with the G?
With the workaround. Once you've chosen an item here at the beginning, and it's set to not print,
or the group, once you choose
a group, and it's a G- group, it's like you've started down a path, and that's the way it will be forever. If you decided later on that you wanted to print the item detail, you would have to start over and put a GP- group on there and just kind of start your quote all over. So, Debbie's right. Once you've chosen a direction to go, to print or to not print, that's where you're going to be. That's why in my business I always choose not to print the item detail, and then I always print a letter so that I have one for my file and my copy. That way I just, am doing the same thing the same way all the time. Are there any other questions, Debbie?
I think that gets us for today with our time, and we can look back over and make sure you can get a log. And if anybody has any questions and you have QuickBooks and Quoting, be sure to post on our forum, our QuickBooks and Quoting forum, or you can email Vicki at minutesmatter.com. And Vicki, you want to tell a little bit about the new coaching program?
Yes, I do.
The second session, because our first one filled up very quickly.
Yeah, it sold out so fast that we had to add another group that will start on February the 11th. The first group will be starting next week, but the second group for coaching will start on February the 11th. And everyone should have gotten an email or two about that already, but let me explain it a little bit. We find that the customers that we have that really immerse themselves initially into learning everything that they possibly can, they have the best experience with their QuickBooks. So we've created a program where you can get 6 weeks of QuickBooks coaching. You'll get a private lesson every week for 6 weeks. And on top of that, you'll also be one of 10 people in a group lesson. So once a week, you'll meet with the group online, similar to what we did today, but you'll be able to ask your questions live because it's a small group of just 10 people. And then after our group lesson, you'll be able to have a private lesson later in the week to either work on the lesson that you'll get at the end of the group lesson. There's a little project every week, and we can work on that privately, or you can actually have me help you with your personal QuickBooks once a week for 6 weeks. So that's 12 hours of QuickBooks instruction in 6 weeks. And if you do that, you'll set yourself up for really good success. At the end of the year, you'll know that your accounting is still in really great shape. There's lots of things that you get with this QuickBooks coaching program. On top of that, you get a discounted rate for private lessons even after your 6 weeks. And you also get a tune-up session at the end of the year. In December, we'll set up an appointment, and I'll come in and take one last look at your QuickBooks and just kind of help you look over everything to see if you're ready to print reports for your accountant or not, and see if there's anything that you need to kind of edit or get cleaned up. So 6 weeks, 12 hours of instruction. You get a manual. You'll get WFCP credit for this because we're doing it in conjunction with WFCP. And you'll also get your IDQ certification, which is offered by Minutes Matter, Interior Designer QuickBooks certification, and lots of other little freebies that you can read about in the email that describes the coaching program. Now, it's not an inexpensive program because there's a lot of time involved. You're getting one-on-one lessons every week, and you're getting the group lesson every week. It's, I believe it's $697 or just under $700. Mm-hmm. And Debbie will split that up into installments if that would make it easier for you to take advantage of the coaching program and fit it into your budget for your business. So if this is the year that you've decided to really get QuickBooks under control, get your accounting under control, this would be a wonderful investment for you to make. I'm just very, very excited about doing it because it just makes me so happy to know that people have, you know, that light bulb finally goes off for them for QuickBooks, because once it does, QuickBooks becomes easy. It's not hard. It's not something that you should dread. So the coaching program, we think, is going to really make a huge difference for people this next year in how they work with QuickBooks.
Well, and you know, another thing, Vicki, is that, you know, accountants go to school for years for their degree. And if you're not hiring, a lot of businesses have an accountant work with them every month, you know, at a certain amount per hour, could be $100 an hour. And you think about if you're doing your own accounting and just hire an accountant. Vicki and I both highly recommend you hire an accountant at the end of the year, you know, to file your taxes for your business. But during the year, you can do your own taxes, and especially if you take the coaching program. So that makes the coaching program, because you take it one time, and the knowledge that you gain from this will take you through the rest of the years of your business, and it's very, very helpful. And it does, for Vicki and I mean, both of us, we spent years trying to get everything right. And, you know, a lot of people can have it in a shorter amount of time. Anybody likes a shorter learning curve.
So that's what we're hoping to do for everybody for this coaching program. Well, I need to close this meeting time now today because I've got more appointments for setups this afternoon with some of you. And I wanted to say thank you one more time to Debbie for helping me with the question and answer today and coming into the meeting, and thank the rest of you for taking time out to learn more about the business side of your business. I applaud that effort, and I'm really glad to see you here today. Let me know if I can answer any questions at Vickie, V-I-C-K-I-E, @minutesmatter.com, and have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.